Raise that flag high as you can. Every season's written in the hands of this band. We've known heartbreak, we've known almost. Now we're writing new chapters for the ones who want it most. It's a new era in that two-tone blue. Hosts stay rising when they run on through. From the river to the ridge, hear that shout roll too. Tennessee Titans, yeah, we're breaking through. Passing the review, bigger things in view. This is our time, yeah. This is our time in that two-tone blue. Oh yeah. New paint on the pylons, fresh name on the back of the jersey. Whole town humming on a Sunday. Like this time, it's our turn surely. Old ghosts in the rafters still talk about the days that we came close. But the huddle feels different now. Every eye locked, every jaw said, we all know. It's a new era in that two-tone blue. Hey, whole stay rising when they run on through. From the river to the ridge, hear that shout roll too. Tennessee Titans, yeah, we're breaking through. Passing the review, bigger things in view. This is our time in that two-tone blue.
What's up, Titans Nation? Welcome in to the 615. I am your host, Lee Hillis, and tonight we are continuing our series around the NFL division by division. This is the second part of this series, and before I dive into this, I would like to let everybody know that we are powered by Bailey's Barbecue. Bailey's Barbecue, smoking good barbecue. We're also powered by What's Shakin' Sports Media, and I do have to give a quick shout out to our partners over at SeatGeek. You can use our code 615podcast. That is 615 PODCAST for $20 off your first order of $50 or more. So tonight, last week we did the AFC North. This week we are doing the NFC North. We're talking Packers, Vikings, Bears, and the Detroit Lions. So the question is, what team am I before? And of course, y'all know we're talking AFC North, but here it is. And so, yes, that is right. We are talking the NFC North. But the question is, what team are we starting with first? Here's a clue.
Chicago Bears, come on! Bear down, Chicago Bears, come on! Bear down, run that field, take that crown.
That is right. We are heading to the Windy City, Chicago, Illinois, to talk about the Chicago Bears. And let's take a quick look at what the Bears brought in as far as additions. They brought in Devin Bush to go into that linebacking core, Jedrick Wills from the Cleveland Browns, Case Keenum to come in and back up Caleb Williams, and Garrett Bradbury in a trade with the New England Patriots. But On the flip side, they lost a really good wide receiver in DJ Moore, and they lost a veteran linebacker in Tremaine Edmonds. So the question is, what does this look like for the Chicago Bears? Well, here's the Bears' schedule. They open up Week 1 at the Carolina Panthers. They then head to division play to host the Minnesota Vikings. They host the Philadelphia Eagles. They host the New York Jets. Then they have to go to Lambeau to play those cheeseheads who we'll talk about here in a little while in the Green Bay Packers. They have to go to the ATL to play the Falcons. They have to host the defending AFC champion New England Patriots. They have to go to the defending Super Bowl champs, the Seattle Seahawks. They have to play Carolina in Week 10 or Week 9. Then after they, not Carolina, Tampa Bay in Week 9. Then in Week 10 is their bye week. Week 11, they play New Orleans. Week 12, they have to go to the Lions. And not to forget to mention, that is Thanksgiving Day. So it's Bears at the Lions for Thanksgiving in Week 12. Week 13, they host Jacksonville. Week 14, they have to go to Miami. Week 15, they have to go to the Buffalo Bills. Week 16, they host the Packers. Week 17, they host the Lions. Week 18, they have to travel to one of the next teams we'll talk about, the Minnesota Vikings. So I want to hear from anybody who's either watching this now or you're coming back to watch this later. What do y'all think the Chicago Bears do as far as wins and losses? Because here's what I'm thinking. 9-8. They win at the Panthers, beat the Vikings in Week 2, drop to Philly in Week 3. They beat the Jets in Week 4. They beat the Packers in Week 5. Lose at Atlanta in Week 6. Lose at Atlanta in Week 6. Lose to the Patriots and then lose to Seattle in Week 7 and 8. Week 9, you beat Tampa Bay. Week 11, or Week 10, which is your bye. Week 11, you beat the Saints. Week 12, you lose at Detroit on Thanksgiving Day. You win back-to-back games. Week 13 against Jacksonville. Week 14 at Miami. You then go on to lose back-to-back games at Buffalo and against division rival Green Bay. You beat the Lions in Week 17, but you lose the final game of the year. And that game right there could decide that 3-4 in the NFC North between the Vikings and the Bears. So drop it down in the comments. Do you think the Bears win 9 games? Over under 9 games? I'm sticking with 9 games because I think the Bears might take a small step back this year. And the next team I do want to take a peek to is a team that I just mentioned. Do you want a hint?
Skål, skål, skål! Hear that horn, hear that horn! Skål, skål, skål! We were born to stand tall and fight as one. Skål, skål, skål! Till the game is done.
That is right. The Minnesota Vikings are on the clock right now here on the What's Shakin' 615 podcast. And let's look at the additions that the Minnesota Vikings made. They added Jawan Jennings last week, or 2 weeks, a week or two ago. They add Kyler Murray and Carson Wentz at quarterback. And then first round, they drafted defensive lineman out of the University of Florida in Caleb Banks. But in the process, they lose Jonathan Allen, veteran safety Harrison Smith, which is a nail in that coffin for that secondary in Minnesota. And they also lose Javon Hargrave. let's take a quick look at this Minnesota Vikings schedule. You play the Packers week 1, at Chicago week 2, at Tampa Bay in week 3. You host the Dolphins in week 4, at New Orleans in week 5. So 3 of your first 5 games are on the road. Week 6, your bye week. Week 7, you host Indy. Week 8, you go to Detroit. Week 9, you host the Buffalo Bills. Week 10, at Green Bay. Week 11, you go to the Bay to play the San Francisco 49ers. Week 12, you host the Falcons. Week 13, you play the Carolina Panthers. Week 14, you go to the defending AFC champion, New England Patriots. Week 15, you host the Lions. Week 16, you host the Commanders. Week 17, you go to the New York Jets. And week 18, you host the Bears. So, I hate to sound like a Debbie Downer. That schedule does not look that easy, given the quarterback situation there in Minnesota. J.J. McCarthy did not look great last year. He didn't look good at all. That's the reason they were picking top 15. Top 15, top 20. Minnesota has a very tough division in front of them with Green Bay, Detroit, them, and the Chicago Bears. So you're probably wondering, well, Lee, what record do you have for the Minnesota Vikings? I've given them one more win. As I said, that Week 18 game could be a toss-up, depending on if Minnesota's already locked up a playoff spot by then. I think they rest their starters against the Chicago Bears. So I have the Vikings going 10-7, winning Week 1 against Green Bay, then losing back-to-back games at Chicago, at Tampa Bay, beating the Dolphins, beating the Saints. So you're 3-2 in the first 5, or you're 3-2 going into your bye week. Week 7, you host Indy. You beat Indianapolis if you're Minnesota. Then you lose 4 straight. At Detroit, at Buffalo, at Green Bay, and then at San Francisco. You then, in Week 12, win back-to-back games against the Panthers and the Falcons, not in that order. Falcons Week 12, Panthers Week 13. You then go on to lose to the defending AFC champion, New England Patriots. You then go on to win 4 straight against Detroit, against the Commanders, at the Jets, and then against the Bears. So I have the Minnesota Vikings going 10-7. And we'll be right back. Before we dive into our next team, we have to let everybody know that we are powered by Bailey's Barbecue. Bailey's Barbecue, smoking good barbecue. And we're also powered by What's Shakin' Sports Media. Go over and you'll see the ticker across the bottom of the screen, where you can find all of our content, all of our videos, everything on the ticker on the bottom of the screen when I drop this graphic down. But before that, we have to give a quick shout out to our partners over at SeatGeek. You can use our code 615podcast, that is 615PODCAST, and get $20 off your first order of $50 or more on SeatGeek.com or on the SeatGeek app. And, of course, tonight we are going around the horn in the AFC North. So you're probably wondering, well, you've already done Chicago. You've already done Minnesota. Lee, what is your next team that you want to look at? Want a hint?
We take the floor, feel that tremble through Ford-Field doors. Hands up high, let the noise hit hard. We're right here and we come this far. Motor City Rock, Motor City Rock. Hear us shake.
That is right. We are heading to the Motor City to talk about the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions have been really good the last 3 or 4 years. They're coming off an NFC Championship appearance 2 years ago. Last year was somewhat of a down year. I think they bounced back this year because of what they've brought in free agency and in the draft. You've got to look at a guy like an Isaiah Pacheco coming over from Kansas City, Cade Mays coming in from Carolina, former Indianapolis DB Rock Ya-Sin, and then Greg Dortch out of, I think it was out of Denver. But in the process, you lose tackle Taylor Decker and you trade running back David Montgomery. That is not a good recipe for the Detroit Lions. So let's take a quick look at the schedule for the Detroit Lions. You play New Orleans in week 1. Go to Buffalo in week 2. The Jets in week 3. At Carolina and at Arizona in back-to-back weeks in week 4 and week 5. Bye week in week 6. You host Green Bay in week 7. Minnesota week 8 at the Dolphins in week 9. You then have to travel to Munich, Germany to play the Patriots in week 10. Tampa Bay in week 11. As I said, Thanksgiving Day against the Bears in week 12. You go to Atlanta week 13. My Tennessee Titans go to Detroit in week 14. At Minnesota week 15. Giants week 16. Then back-to-back road games in division at the Bears and at the Packers to round out your season. Well, if you go back and look at what Detroit has, I feel better about their quarterback situation than I do Minnesota or Chicago with the veteran Jared Goff. And of course, you have a loaded receiving corps headlined by Amon-Ra St. Brown. So you're probably thinking, what's your record prediction? Well, there it is. I have the Detroit Lions going 11-6. And the reason why is what I just stated. They have a really good offense headlined by Amon-Ra St. Brown, that receiving corps. You've got Jahmyr Gibbs in the backfield, who's a perennial running back in that division. And then you have to look at that defensive line. You have a young edge rusher in Aiden Hutchinson. So I think Detroit is 11-6, winning games against New Orleans, the Jets, the Panthers, the Cardinals. Then you win back-to-back division games against the Packers, against the Vikings. You go to Miami and win. You go to Germany and beat the Patriots. Tampa Bay gets you in week 11 because you're coming back from Munich, Germany. And that's a tough trip. You're going international. Most teams would have a bye week after making a trip out of the country. So that's why I have them going to Germany and winning, then coming home and losing to Tampa Bay. You beat the Bears in week 12 on Thanksgiving Day. You beat the Falcons in week 13. Then the Lions lose to the Titans in week 14. At Minnesota week 15 with a win. And then they lose 3 straight to the Giants, to the Bears, to the Packers. So the Lions I have finishing 11-6. So if you're going back to watch this later, or you are watching this live, drop it down in the comment section. What do you think the Detroit Lions do? Are they 11-6, or are they better, or are they worse than 11-6? So I've already gone through Detroit. I've already gone through Minnesota. I've already gone through Chicago. We're now going through, in my opinion, one of the most historic teams in the NFC North. It's time to take a Lambeau leap. Yes, that is right. We are heading to the frozen tundra, the Lambeau Field, to have a Lambeau Leap. And I think this team is probably the best team in the division, because if you look at what the Packers brought in, they brought in veteran pieces with linebacker Zaire Franklin coming over in a trade with Indianapolis. Benjamin St. Just from that I'd have to figure out. Sky Moore coming over from Kansas City. Javon Hargrave coming over from, I want to say it was Minnesota. Jaden Reed gets an extension. They bring in Tyrod Taylor to back up Jordan Love. And then Christian Watson. But then you lose two really big pieces, in my opinion. When you trade away Rashawn Gary to the Dallas Cowboys. Or, as my counterpart over on Watch Second Titan says, the Dallas Cowgirls. And then Devontae Weeks to the Philadelphia Eagles. And then Elton Jenkins, who was, in my opinion, a really good starter for you. And was a solid veteran piece. So the question is, what do the Packers look like? Well, here's their schedule. They go to Minnesota, to the New York Jets, the Falcons, at Tampa Bay, and then they host the Chicago Bears. The first 5 games, that is a very, I don't want to say daunting schedule, but it's a very winnable stretch. Then they have the Dallas Cowgirls in Week 6. To Detroit in Week 7. Carolina Panthers in Week 8. At the New England Patriots in Week 9. Minnesota Vikings in Week 10. Then you have your bye week in Week 11. You go to the Rams in Week 12. Saints at the Saints Week 13. Host the Bills in Week 14. Host the Dolphins in Week 15. At the Chicago Bears in Week 16. The Houston Texans in Week 17. And the Detroit Lions in Week 18. I'm gonna set this straight. I think the Packers have a very winnable schedule. Enough to, I don't know, take the NFC North. And that's exactly what they do. The Packers go 12-5. The only 5 losses that they have are at the Vikings, the Bears, at the Lions, at the Patriots, and at the Rams. They only lose 1 home game all year. And it's a division game against the Chicago Bears. They go on to beat the Jets at home at New York, beat the Falcons at home, win at Tampa, beat the Cowgirls, or the Dallas Cowboys, the Carolina Panthers, the Minnesota Vikings. They go on to win at New Orleans, beat the Bills, beat the Dolphins, win at Chicago, Texans, and then the Lions. And before we dive into the very back end of this thing, when I give you my NFC standings and a preview for next week's show, or who we're talking about next week, we have to give you another notice that we are powered by Bailey's Barbecue. Bailey's Barbecue, smoking good barbecue. And we're also powered by What's Shakin' Sports Media. And if you're going to a ball game anytime this summer, College World Series starts this week. You have the World Cup going on right now. You have preseason starting in 2 months, literally. So if you're going to any games this year, MLB is going on right now. You can use our code over on SeatGeek. You can use our code 615 podcast. That is 615 POD. Heck, you can use our code 615 podcast. That is 615 PODCAST to get $20 off your first order of $50 or more on SeatGeek.com or on the SeatGeek app. So now, let's dive in to my NFC standings. I have two playoff teams coming out of this division. The Green Bay Packers winning this division at 12-5. And then I also have in the wild card the Detroit Lions at 11-6. Chicago, both Chicago and Minnesota missing it, but just by not much. 10-7 for Minnesota, 9-8 for the Chicago Bears. But before we get out of here, just want to give you a quick heads up that this time next week, next Thursday, at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, we are going for part 3. This time we are going to the AFC South to talk the Tennessee Titans, the Houston Texans, the Indianapolis Colts, and the Jacksonville Jaguars. So come hang out with us, join us, and if you have friends that are Titans fans, Texans fans, Jaguars fans, or Colts fans, invite them in and let us have a lot of fun. Let's talk some smack and let's just enjoy this episode as we continue on into our Around the NFL division by division series. We have, after this week, we only have 5 more shows going into next week. Or no, 6 more shows, including next week. Going into the NFC South next week. And the last show to round out the month of June is the NFC South. And then first 2 weeks of July, we're going AFC and NFC West. And then the last 2 shows are the AFC and NFC East. And then for Titans fans, we are going back and talking about the first week of NFL training camp, specifically Titans training camp. So, Titans fans, as I like to say, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Stay classy and Titan.